The kiss looked tender to everyone else. I saw what they missed. The smear of rust-dark rouge along her knuckles was not makeup. It was mine. The choir sang Silent Night. I counted the lies. By midnight, my stepmother would be in handcuffs beneath the same mistletoe she used as a halo, and my father, he would finally have to choose who he really was. My name is Elena Brooks. I am 32 years old, and I am a senior clinical specialist at Northbridge Medical Systems. My job is to stand in operating rooms during complex cardiac procedures and guide surgeons through the implantation of our devices. I observe, I correct, I am paid for my detachment. This is why I can stand in the oppressive, pine-scented heat of my father's great hall in Red Willow, Vermont, and catalog the scene with clinical precision, even as the first flakes of a blizzard begin to cling to the window panes. The annual Christmas Eve gala is in full swing. The air is thick with the smell of wet wool from arriving coats, simmering cider, and a heavy, expensive perfume I associate only with my stepmother. Veronica Hale owns this room. She does not merely occupy it. At 50-something, she is polished to a high sheen, a philanthropic icon wrapped in emerald green silk. As chair of the Hale Family Foundation, she is the patron saint of Red Willow, adored by the town elders who now orbit her. Sipping her champagne, she glides, never just walks, her perfectly modulated laugh puncturing the polite hum of the string quartet. My father, Malcolm Brooks, stands near the massive fieldstone fireplace. He is a stoic man, a contractor who spent decades framing houses with his own hands before Veronica's money transitioned him into a real estate renovator. He is a man built of gestures more than words, a shrug, a nod, a hand half raised. Tonight, his shoulders look tight in the expensive tuxedo. He keeps the peace by refusing to acknowledge conflict, a passive neutrality that has cost me more than he will ever know. I catalog the flaws in the staging. It is a reflex. A hairline cracks spiderwebs from the top corner of the gilded foyer mirror, distorting the reflection of the chandelier. There is a faint, greasy smear on the white-painted banister of the main staircase, visible only when the light hits it, and from the downstairs powder room, cutting through the cloying scent of potpourri, comes a faint, sharp tang, iodine, an antiseptic. I watch Veronica's right hand as she accepts a canapé from a passing waiter. It is slightly swollen, mild edema across the dorsal surface, with specific inflammation over the third and fourth metacarpophalangeal joints, the knuckles. She jokes to Judge Miller about her terrible holiday knuckle dryness. I know the difference between dry skin and impacted tissue. Now, under the mistletoe hanging in the main archway, my father kisses her. Malcolm performs the kiss, a brief, dry press of lips, but Veronica turns it into a tableau. She places her left hand on his chest, tilting her head. The guests coo, a soft, appreciative murmur. My jaw aches. A deep, thrumming pulse radiates from the temporomandibular joint, sharp and metallic. An hour ago, in the pantry, hidden between racks of spices and holiday china. She had shown me the papers. I had refused. The shove was not the point. It was the crack of her open hand against the side of my face, sharp and deliberate, meant to stun. An adult-on-adult assault, calculated and precise. The metallic taste is my own blood. A small cut on the inside of my cheek where my teeth met. I rebuild my composure. It is a checklist. Slow the heart rate. Breathe in for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 6. Catalog the room. Exits. 2 arched doorways to the foyer. 1 swing door to the kitchen. French doors to the frozen terrace. Cameras. None. This house runs on whispers, not wires. Who is watching me? Mrs. Albright from the Historical Society, Mr. Henderson, the bank manager, and the police chief. I am observed. Veronica glides toward me, her face a mask of loving concern, the emerald silk whispering around her. She leans in, the cloud of her perfume making my eyes water. Her voice is a velvet whisper, meant only for me. Elena, dear, those family documents, We must get them signed after dessert. Just a little holiday logistic. The word documents lands. I file it away. Not as a piece of paper, but as an instrument, a tool, laid out on a sterile tray. I nod, a small, tight movement that costs my bruised jaw. The Red Willow small town chorus files onto the landing of the grand staircase. They begin, Silent Night. The sound is meant to be holy, a forced layer of peace plastered over the room. Across the hall, I spot the local police chief, Stratton, a man whose uniform always seems one size too tight. He is toasting Veronica with a tumbler of scotch. It is not a polite gesture. The familiarity is too warm, the smile too broad. It is not neutral. A hush falls as the dessert is announced. The pie is cut. It is a massive, perfect creation. Veronica holds the antique silver knife, her swollen right hand steady as she presses down. The crust cracks. I make my resolve. Tonight is the last night. It is the last time she will ever tell this narrative. The one where she is the savior, and I am the difficult, unstable daughter. This is the last night she tells the story without me. This precision, this clean cut, is a lie. My presence here is not a return. It is an audit. It began at Thanksgiving, just last month. I arrived early, a deliberate choice, hoping to catch my father alone. Instead, I found Veronica in the kitchen, decanting gravy into a heated porcelain boat. She turned, a perfect pantomime of surprise, and the boat slipped. A thick, dark wave of scalding gravy splashed across the front of my cream silk blouse. "Oh, Elena, you clumsy thing," she had murmured, dabbing at me with a linen napkin, her touch lingering just a bit too long, her grip on my arm just a bit too tight. "Quick, run upstairs and change before anyone sees you. There is a cashmere robe in the guest suite." Isolation, that was the tactic. Remove me from the board. While the cousins arrived downstairs, I was trapped, smelling of beef fat and thyme. I did not go to the guest suite. I went to my father's study. The room was quiet, smelling of old leather and his faint, sweet pipe tobacco. He was not there. On his desk, a stack of papers sat next to his reading glasses. A draft durable power of attorney. I scanned it. Veronica Hale, primary. Me, Elena Brooks, secondary, but only upon the primary's incapacitation or refusal. My father sat at the small side table by the window, not working, but scribbling absent-mindedly on a notepad, filling in the loops of the letter O over and over. He did not even look up when I entered. He just hummed along to the football game on the small television. That was the first piece. The second was in the kitchen. Tucked inside Veronica's copy of The Joy of Cooking was a business card. Michael Sloan, private banking. In the margin, in Veronica's looping script, a note. Transfer before January 1st. Tonight, as I watch her laugh with Judge Miller, I remember that note. I connected it 3 weeks ago. I had a copy of the program for this very gala. Veronica's foundation always lists its patrons. Gold patron, Vanguard Ridge, LLC. A name I did not recognize. At 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, fueled by black coffee and a growing cold dread, I taught myself how to mine county property records. Vanguard Ridge, LLC was a shell, registered 6 months ago. Its sole holding, my father's workshop on Harbor Street, the one place he still went to work with his hands, the one piece of real estate that was his and his alone before the marriage. The transfer was pending, set to finalize after the new year, before January 1st. I learned, I adapted. I began to build a case as methodically as I would prep a patient file for regulatory review. My car, for instance, it has a dash cam. Before any private talks with Veronica, always requested in the car, where she felt insulated, I switched the settings, not just video, cabin audio. It is a one-party consent state. I never told anyone. The recordings are backed up to a secure cloud server, encrypted. The evidence came from outside the family. Too, our old neighbor, Mrs. Petroff, stopped me at the Red Willow post office. She looked over both shoulders before speaking, her voice thin. Be careful, Elena, she whispered, clutching her mail. She got things fixed for your father. Zoning, inspections, my brother's boy. He works at city permits. He saw the files. Veronica brings the inspectors gifts, gift cards, bottles, small things, but the signatures always follow. She told me Malcolm's projects were passing inspections they should have failed. Even my own career was not separate. A colleague at Northbridge, someone I respect, pulled me aside after a regional meeting. Elena, strange thing, he said, frowning at his tablet. That research grant you spearheaded for the new catheter guide? The one you won? I saw the press release from the Hale Foundation. It said the grant was recredited via Veronica's foundation. It reads like she secured the funding, a quiet siphoning of my professional recognition, redirecting my work to polish her philanthropic halo. So, I built the folder. It sits in my briefcase, locked, in the guest room. Timestamps of every conversation, scanned emails, notarized copies of my grant applications next to her foundation's press releases. I drove to another county, found a notary who did not know my name or my family, and had her certify screen captures of the property databases and the LLC registration. It is a clinical record of a pathology. I drafted a whistleblower packet. It is addressed to the State Attorney General, White Collar Crimes Division. It is sealed. It is undelivered. I was waiting for one final piece of proof, something that tied the financial motive to direct, undeniable coercion. Veronica provided it. She began the counterattack 2 weeks ago, just after I started asking quiet questions about the Harbor Street property. She began to intimate to family friends, to the church board, that I was unstable, that I had a bad fall while hiking, that I was overworked, perhaps depressed. Not myself. I logged the first footprints of the smear campaign. She was not just building a case to steal his assets. She was building one to discredit the only witness. This is what I do now. I stand at 2 a.m., coffee gone cold, highlighters drying out, and I learn who owns whom in Red Willow. I learn which bank manager plays golf with which city councilman. I learn that the Hale Family Foundation is not a charity. It is a washer. Cleaning influence, cleaning money, cleaning my father's legacy until only Veronica's name remains. And now, here, tonight, she is handing me the final piece of evidence, the family documents she wants signed after dessert. She is trying to close the loop, and she is doing it on Christmas Eve, using the holiday as emotional camouflage. She thinks I am the same daughter who let her spill gravy on me. She does not know that I am a specialist, and I have already cataloged all the instruments on the tray. The performance of the party was peaking, a high, glittering wave of noise and false cheer. I needed a moment of clinical silence. I murmured an excuse to my second cousin, whose name I could never recall, and slipped through the swinging door into the kitchen. It was not silent. It was a different kind of chaos. White-coated caterers moved with tense, rapid efficiency. The air was humid, smelling of roasted garlic, steam, and the sharp tang of cooling pans. A stack of depleted trays sat on the steel island, casualties of the first wave of appetizers. I was heading for the industrial-sized refrigerator, just for a bottle of cold water, when Veronica appeared at my elbow. Her movement was fluid, practiced. She had an uncanny ability to materialize in any room she intended to control. "Elena, dear, you look exhausted." Her voice was a low thrum of manufactured concern, perfectly pitched beneath the clatter of plates. She placed her hand on my forearm. Her skin was warm, her grip proprietary. "You work far too hard in that city. All those hours, all that pressure. It leaves you looking so peaky." I did not pull away. I simply stood, letting her perform. I watched her eyes. As I formulated a polite, non-committal response, her gaze flicked, just for a second, to the digital clock on the commercial-grade oven, 9:03 p.m. Then her eyes snapped back to mine, the mask of concern locking back into place. It was the tell. She was not concerned. She was scheduling. I was an item on her agenda. I'm fine, Veronica. It's just the heat in the main room. Of course, she soothed, patting my arm before withdrawing her hand. Which is exactly why we really must get those holiday logistics sorted out for your father. He worries so, he hates leaving things unfinished. It would be the best possible gift for him, just to have it all settled and tidy, a clean slate for the new year. Holiday logistics. I filed the term, a euphemism, designed to sterilize the act. You manage logistics for shipping, for surgical schedules, for troop movements. You do not use it for a family's future. I had to see the weapon before she could deploy it. I played the role she had assigned me, the tired, overworked daughter, eager to please. You are right. If it helps Dad, I am happy to do it. You said they were just harmless forms? Can I glance over them now? Just so I know what we are signing later. I would hate to hold things up by having to read them cold. Her smile brightened. It was a victor's smile. I had taken the bait. Oh, Elena. So responsible. Of course. She turned to a small, built-in desk in the corner, where she kept her household accounts, from a neat leather portfolio. She slid out a sheaf of papers, not the full, ribbon-bound stack I had seen in the pantry. This was different, thinner. This is just the executive summary, she said, handing them to me. Our attorney drafted it so we could all be on the same page. Simple, really? The paper was thick, creamy, expensive. The font was a severe Times New Roman. I scanned the text. It was dense with legal jargon, but I am trained to read complex medical protocols, to find the single qualifying or disqualifying phrase in a wall of text. I found it on the third page, paragraph 2, subsection B. Hereby converting all joint personal and brokerage accounts listed in Appendix A into a revocable trust, aforementioned trust to be managed by. I stopped. My breath did not catch. My heart did not pound. Everything simply went very still. Managed by Veronica Hale, as sole trustee. Not co-trustee, not in partnership with my father. Sole, the power was not being shared. It was being transferred, absolutely, all of his assets, liquid and property, funneled into a legal entity that she, and she alone, would control. The power of attorney I had seen at Thanksgiving was the appetizer. This was the main course. I kept my face neutral, reading the line again as if it were a simple grocery list. I forced myself to scan the rest of the page, to mimic the act of casual review. I needed to know the timeline. I kept my voice flat. This seems very comprehensive for holiday logistics. It looks like a complete estate overhaul. Is there a particular rush? A rush? Heavens, no, she laughed. A brittle, airy sound. She began rearranging flowers in a small vase on the counter, her back partially to me. It's just tidying. Your father, as you know, hates loose ends. I waited. The silence stretched, amplified by the kitchen noise. I did not fill it. I let her be discomforted by it. It was a technique I used in operating rooms. When you ask a question and the surgeon is defensive, you wait. The truth often comes in the sentence after the lie. Her hands stilled over the flowers, her smile, reflected in the dark window over the sink, tightened. And of course, she added, her voice sharpening just a fraction, there is the bridge loan for the Harbor Street expansion. That's due on the 27th. The bank, you understand, likes all the estate paperwork to be finalized first. Just a formality. They need to know the new trust is the acting entity. Bingo. There it was. The urgency. December 27th, 3 days from now, the day after the banks reopened from the holiday. The January 1st deadline. I had seen on the banker's card was a buffer. The date for the property transfer, the real deadline, the point of leverage, was the bridge loan. She had taken out a loan against the Harbor Street property, my father's property, and now she needed his other assets, consolidated under her sole control, to secure or pay it. This was not just greed, it was a timetable. She was leveraged. I handed the papers back to her, my expression mild. Thank you. I will look at the full documents later. Then, I left her there and walked back into the main hall. The heat, the noise, the smell of pine and perfume crashed over me. My father was standing by the fireplace, nursing a small glass of cider, looking trapped. The string quartet was playing a saccharine arrangement of "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas." I moved toward him. Before I was within 3 feet, Veronica materialized at his side, linking her arm through his, claiming him. She had exited the kitchen through the other door. She smiled at me, a dazzling, proprietary smile. "Dad," I said, keeping my voice even, "Veronica mentioned some trust documents." "It's all set, dear," Veronica answered for him, her tone bright and dismissive. "Just a signature after pie. We are helping him get organized. It's so dull. You do not need to worry your pretty head about it." I did not look at her. I held my father's gaze. "Dad, did you read the part about the revocable trust? The one where she's the sole trustee?" My father's face went blank, a mask of strategic neutrality. He looked from me to Veronica, and I could see the mechanism of his mind click into its oldest, deepest groove. Conflict avoidance. He was a man cornered. "Elena," he said, his voice hesitant. He cleared his throat. "It's Christmas Eve. It's a party. Did you see the game last night? That last quarter was something, wasn't it? Really something?" The pivot, the classic conversational deflection. He would not engage. He would not confirm or deny. He would not look at the snake on the table. His silence was his assent, his surrender. He was keeping the peace. He was keeping it by sacrificing his daughter. He was keeping it by sacrificing himself. "I am glad you are so interested in the paperwork," I said, shifting my approach. This was not the time. "But it is a lot to take in tonight. With the party, let's just postpone this until after Christmas. I would feel more comfortable if my own counsel could review it." The air between the 3 of us went cold, the heat from the fire blocked by a wall of ice. Veronica's smile became a brittle, painted thing. "Lawyers?" she asked, her voice dripping with sorrowful disappointment. "Elena, dear, this is family." She squeezed my father's arm. "Family shouldn't need lawyers. It is just trust." She used the word as a weapon, knowing the document in her portfolio was its executioner. The line was not for me. It was for my father, to paint me as the outsider, the one bringing this ugliness, this distrust, into their home on Christmas. I needed to document this. "Excuse me," I murmured, and stepped away, moving toward the alcove near the front door where the coats were being checked. I pulled out my phone. I opened a secure, encrypted note application. I began typing. Time, 9:14 p.m. Location, main hall, by fireplace. Witnesses, Malcolm Brooks, Veronica Hale. Quote, "Family shouldn't need lawyers." Quote, "Bridge loan due December 27th. This was not a diary. This was data entry, contemporaneous memos. I saved it. From the alcove, I had a clear view of them. I watched as Veronica turned to my father, her face a mask of profound, loving concern. She spoke to him earnestly, her hand now on his lapel, straightening a tie that was already straight. She shook her head, a small, sad gesture. I saw my father's brow furrow, his expression troubled as he looked at me across the room. I could read the pantomime. I knew the script. She has such a temper. She is so unstable. She is attacking me, on Christmas Eve. I am so worried about her. She was planting the seed. This was the setup. The competency clause I had seen in the full draft in the pantry, the one allowing the trustee to liquidate assets if competency was in question, was not just about him. It was about invalidating me. I needed the final piece from the kitchen. I slipped back in. The chaos had subsided. The caterers were prepping dessert plates. Veronica had been there moments before, speaking to the head chef. On the steel counter, by a stack of clean plates, lay a crumpled linen napkin. It was not there before. On it, I saw a small, greasy smear of a pale yellow balm. I picked it up. It smelled faintly of arnica and camphor. I recognized it instantly, not hand lotion. It was a high-potency skin tear and bruising balm. The kind we use in post-operative recovery for patients with thin skin. The kind you use for blunt force trauma. Her dry knuckles, aggravated by the assault in the pantry, were split skin. She had come in here to treat the injury, to hide the evidence of her attack. Observational medicine as a weapon. I folded the napkin carefully, the greasy smear protected in the center, and slid it into the deep pocket of my blazer. Evidence. I walked back out. The chess game had to advance. I found Veronica by the dessert table, where she was instructing a caterer on the placement of the pie. I approached, my voice calm, pleasant, and just loud enough for Mrs. Albright, who was standing nearby, to overhear. "Veronica, I have been thinking," I said, smiling. "You are absolutely right. We should handle this while I am home, but tonight is just too chaotic, and I want to give it my full attention." Her eyes narrowed, but she held her smile. "Let's do the signatures tomorrow," I continued, projecting warmth. "In the daylight, after brunch, we can even invite Rowan and May over to be witnesses. Make it official and festive." I was offering her a stage, but I was also defining the terms. Daylight, witnesses, not in the shadows, not after midnight. I saw the fractional tightening around her eyes. She was trapped by the sheer reasonableness of my request, especially with Mrs. Albright listening, nodding in approval of such a sensible familial plan. Veronica had no choice but to agree. "What a wonderful, thoughtful idea. Dear," she said, her voice a chime of forced brightness. "Tomorrow. Then, after brunch, it is a date." She agreed, but I saw the calculation in her gaze. She knew I was delaying. She knew I was challenging her. She would not let it get to tomorrow. She would have to force the issue tonight, before her deadline expired. The game had accelerated. My agreement to a daylight signing was a feint. Veronica would never let it get that far. Her December 27th deadline was a flashing red light. She had 3 days, and 2 of them were a national holiday. She had to close this tonight, while the emotional cover of Christmas Eve was thick, and my father was softened by cider and carols. Her smile was an acceptance of my move, but her eyes promised a counter-move. I had to prepare the surgical theater. I found my cousins, Rowan and May, by the dessert table, debating the structural integrity of a gingerbread house. They were the closest thing to allies I had in this house, not because they knew the truth, but because they existed outside Veronica's immediate sphere of influence. "Rowan, May," I said, keeping my voice light, "I need your help with a surprise for Dad. I put together a slideshow, old photos, holidays, the works. I want to project it at midnight, right after the carols. But the projector is heavy, and I need help lifting it onto the cart in the study." Rowan, ever the pragmatist, rolled her eyes. "A slideshow. Elena? Seriously? That's peak 90s cheese." "It's what he likes," I said, a half-truth. "It's sentimental. Can you help me? Around 11:30? We can wheel it out to the archway." "Fine," May agreed, elbowing her brother. "We'll do it. But if I see one picture of me in braces, I'm pulling the plug." "Deal," I said. The plug, that was the next step. The HDMI source for that projector would not be a DVD player. It would be my laptop, on my desktop. 5 neatly organized folders sat inside a master folder. They were not labeled old photos. They were labeled Foundation, Trust, LLC, and Bank. The 5th folder was labeled Audio, and it contained the encrypted recording from my car and the short, damning clip I was about to capture. I moved from the main hall. Retrieving my purse from the coat check, I needed a secure perimeter. I went upstairs to the guest room I was assigned, locking the door behind me. The noise of the party was a dull thrum beneath my feet. I took out my secondary phone, a burner I kept for data backups. I logged into a private, unlisted streaming service. I propped the phone on the bureau, angled toward the door, and started the stream. It was a test. The feed was stable. The timestamp was accurate. It was backing up to a secure cloud server, creating an unalterable record of my movements from this point forward. I had to recruit my witness. I went back downstairs. I scanned the crowd and found her, Marisol. She was an ER nurse I knew from Northbridge, invited tonight not by me, but by a mutual colleague who served on Veronica's foundation board. Marisol was unflappable. I had seen her handle a code blue with a calm that bordered on chilling. She was standing alone, observing the room with the same detached assessment I used myself. I moved to her side, picking up a glass of sparkling water from a tray. "It's a scene, isn't it?" I murmured, nodding toward the crowd. Marisol glanced at me, a small, wry smile touching her lips. "It's a pre-op holding area with better clothes. Everyone's smiling. Everyone's terrified." "Marisol," I said, my voice low and direct. "I need a favor, a professional one. I am not asking you to intervene, and no one here is a child or in physical danger, but I might need a second set of eyes on the room later tonight, someone who knows how to observe a scene without becoming part of it. Specifically, I need you to watch my stepmother, Veronica." Her ER-trained eyes sharpened. She did not ask why. She did not ask what was wrong. She processed the request. "What am I looking for?" "An escalation," I said. "A change in behavior. She may try to create a scene, a medical drama, or a confrontation. I just need someone who can document, factually, what they see, who approached whom, what the body language was. Can you do that?" "Contemporaneous notes," she said, nodding. "I can do that. You expecting trouble?" "I'm expecting a procedure," I replied, "and procedures sometimes have complications." "Got it," she said. She turned back to the room, her posture unchanged, but her gaze now had intent. Next, I needed the external pressure. I slipped out the side door, into the biting Vermont cold. The air was a physical shock, cleansing my lungs of the perfumed, superheated air inside. Snow was falling heavily now, coating the blue spruces in a thick, wet layer, muffling the sound of the party. I walked just far into the side yard to be out of sight of the windows. I pulled out my primary phone and dialed. It rang twice. "Keen?" The voice was brisk, no nonsense. "Dana, it's Elena Brooks. I was wondering if I'd hear from you. Elena, your email last week was thorough, but not complete." Dana Keene was an assistant attorney general. I had met through a Northbridge compliance seminar. We had spoken twice since, off the record. "I am completing it tonight," I said, my breath pluming in the dark. "I'm at the house. She's forcing the signature on the trust documents. She has a bridge loan due on the 27th. That's the leverage." "That's the motive," Dana corrected. "It's not a crime to be leveraged. Is she forcing him?" "She is about to, and she is using a competency clause to invalidate him and to discredit me as a witness. I am going to stop it, but I need a backstop." "What kind of backstop?" "I am going to email you the full packet at exactly 11:55 p.m. tonight. The notarized documents, the audio files, the property records, and a contemporaneous memo of what has happened in the last 2 hours. If you hear me say a specific phrase, if anyone at this party hears it, I need you to act, not tomorrow, tonight." A pause. I heard her tapping on a keyboard. "What's the phrase?" "I am going to ask my father if he understands the competency clause. That's the trigger. When you get my email, I need you to call the Red Willow Police Chief's boss, the state barracks. Tell them you have received a credible whistleblower report of elder fraud in progress and financial coercion at this address, and that the local police chief is a compromised party. I need them to know that any attempt to detain or silence me will be viewed as witness tampering." Another, longer pause. "That's a high-wire act. Elena?" "I know," I said. "But she has the chief in her pocket. I need to go over his head, and I need to do it before he can react." 11:55, Dana said. "Send the packet. I'll have the on-call investigator briefed and ready to make the call if he hears the trigger. Stay safe." I hung up. One more call. A text. This time, to Officer Jonah Pike. Pike was a straight arrow patrolman, a young guy who still believed in the job, and who openly disliked the chief's lazy, backslapping politics. I had met him when I filed a police report for a fender bender last summer. He was methodical. My text: "Officer Pike, Elena Brooks. I am at my father's house on Old Mill Road. I am concerned about a non-violent but very tense situation here. I cannot trust Chief Stratton. Would it be possible for you to swing by on a routine patrol near midnight? Just a presence. If you get a noise complaint call from this address, please respond to it yourself. It will be a pretext. I may need a neutral third-party witness. A minute later, my phone vibrated. Ms. Brooks, I am on shift tonight. I can be in that sector around midnight. I will keep my radio clear. I slipped back inside, my face numb from the cold. The party was louder now, the alcohol taking hold. I needed to place the last piece. In my blazer pocket was a tiny body cam, no bigger than a shirt button. I had palmed it from my purse on the way upstairs. I moved to the main archway, the one where the mistletoe hung in a large festive clump. Veronica and my father had been standing here all night. It was the central stage, the study, where I knew Veronica had staged the signing table, was just off this archway, the door clearly visible. Pretending to admire the decorations, I reached up and adjusted a pine bough, my fingers working quickly, nestling the tiny lens deep in the greenery, angled perfectly to capture the archway, the path to the study, and the table just inside the study door. I activated it. It would record for 3 hours, uploading directly to the same secure cloud as my phone stream. Now, the power. I went into the study. No one was there, as I suspected. A heavy mahogany table was set up near the door. On it sat the leather portfolio, 2 antique pens, and a bottle of celebratory scotch, and the projector, sitting on its cart, unplugged. I located the floor outlet. I took a smart outlet adapter from my purse, one I could control from my phone, and plugged it in. I plugged the projector into it. I tested it. My phone app connected. I could kill the power to the projector from anywhere in the room, a failsafe. If she tried to seize the presentation, I could black it out. I returned to the guest room one last time. I opened my laptop. I created a new folder on the desktop, visible and obvious. I labeled it Holiday Recipes. I put 2 decoy files inside, Veronica's famous cider and Aunt May's sugar cookies. I placed this folder directly on top of the real, evidence-labeled master folder. It was bait. Veronica was a snooper. She would not be able to resist checking my laptop if she got the chance, to see if I had any other surprises. When she found the recipes folder, it would satisfy her curiosity and confirm, in her mind, my harmlessness. I ran the scenarios. This was my clinical training. Rehearse the procedure. Version 1. Private. I get her into the study. Just me, her, and my father. I present the evidence quietly. I demand she tear up the trust agreement. Low chance of success. She is too strong-willed, and my father's avoidance would allow her to control the narrative. Version 2. Semi-public. The witness signing I had proposed, with Rowan and May present. I raise the legal concerns. It becomes a contained family argument. Better, but still risky. Veronica could easily paint me as hysterical, and my cousins would be outmatched. Version 3. Full exposure. The slideshow. This was the nuclear option. This was the one I was preparing for. This would be public, undeniable, and would force my father's hand. I would escalate only if Veronica forced it, and I knew, as I watched her laugh across the room, her swollen knuckles catching the light, she would force it. I went into the guest bathroom. From my purse, I removed a small chemical ice pack and a tube of thick, medical-grade concealer. I snapped the pack to activate it, the chemicals turning instantly, painfully cold. I held it against my aching jaw, where her hand had connected. Contingency, not martyrdom. I would not appear on that stage as a victim. I would appear as a specialist. I would be calm. I would be precise. And I would not have a single mark on my face when I began the presentation. The ice pack was for the swelling. The concealer was for the faint. Red-purple shadow that was already beginning to bloom. I had work to do. The ice pack and concealer did their job. By 10:30, the swelling in my jaw was a dull, manageable ache, and the bruise was a faint yellow shadow, invisible in the warm, flattering light of the gala. I was no longer a patient. I was the specialist. I re-entered the main hall. The party had reached its peak. The house was flooded. This was not just a collection of friends. It was an ecosystem of influence Veronica had cultivated. I saw the city officials, their faces slightly flushed from the free-flowing wine, clustered near the bar. The church board, led by the obsequious Reverend Michaels, held court by the fireplace, their wives admiring Veronica's towering Christmas tree, and the donors, the real money, men and women who ran banks and construction firms, they were the ones Veronica herself was circling. I watched them, not as guests, but as a jury pool. I noted the pairings, the loyalties. It was like creating a seating chart for a trial. Judge Miller, who had signed off on Veronica's last zoning variance, was deep in conversation with Mr. Henderson, the bank manager whose card I had found in Veronica's cookbook. The police chief, Stratton, was not talking to anyone official. He was laughing with two of my father's contractors, men whose livelihoods depended on the projects Veronica fixed. It was a room of interlocking interests, a web, and Veronica was the spider at its center. She was magnificent, a creature of pure performance. She flitted, a vision in emerald. Her glass of champagne always full but never sipped. She refilled glasses, brushed invisible lint from shoulders, touched elbows, building a physical network of charm. I watched her right hand, under the bright chandelier light. It was undeniably redder now, the skin over the knuckles angry and tight. She laughed as Mrs. Albright pointed to it, a high, tinkling sound. "Oh, this?" she trilled, holding it up for inspection. "You would not believe the fight I had with a roll of wrapping paper. Thousands of tiny cuts. I call them wrapping injuries. The price we pay for a perfect Christmas. Am I right?" The women around her nodded in sympathetic, feminine understanding. I saw Marisol, my ER nurse witness, standing near the edge of the group. She met my eyes for a fraction of a second. Her expression was perfectly neutral, but she saw it. She saw the lie. It was not the small, sharp cuts of paper. It was the blunt, abraded trauma of impact. My father was holding his own court, as much as he ever did. He stood with two of the developers, men in suits that looked too tight for their thick frames. Malcolm was boasting, his voice, rare in its volume, laced with a pride I had not heard in years. "The Harbor Street project," he was saying, gesturing with his cider glass. "It's the one. We are breaking ground in February. A full restoration. We are bringing that whole block back to life. It is my legacy." One of the developers clapped him on the shoulder. "It's a bold move, Malcolm, a hell of a bold move." I felt a cold, sharp pang of something, not just anger, pity. He was boasting about a project that was no longer his. He was celebrating a legacy that was being actively, methodically stolen from him, held in the shell company Vanguard Ridge LLC, which Veronica controlled completely. He was the only one in that circle who did not know the truth. The string quartet finished its set with a flourish. A quiet anticipation settled over the room. The Red Willow Small Town Chorus began to cue under the main archway, shuffling their sheet music, preparing for the midnight carols. This was my cue. I moved from the perimeter. I found a spot near the arch, close to the mistletoe, but slightly to the side. I was now directly in the line of sight of the tiny camera I had planted in the pine bough. It would see me. It would see the study door just behind me. It would see everyone who entered or exited. I was standing on my stage, waiting for the curtain. The party's energy began to focus. People were turning from their conversations, finding places to stand to listen to the choir. The timeline was compressing. Veronica knew it, too. She found me, gliding through the crowd as if she had a magnet and I was steel. She stopped beside me, her back to the study door, her face arranged in a perfect smile for the room. "Isn't this lovely, dear?" she said, her voice a public murmur. Then, her smile tightening by a millimeter, she squeezed my elbow. It was not a gentle touch. It was a grip, her fingers digging into the muscle, a sharp, punitive pressure. It was a physical reminder of her power, of what had happened in the pantry. "After dessert, dear," she whispered, her voice a thread of silk-wrapped steel. "No more delays." She released me and turned, blowing a kiss to Judge Miller, the transition instantaneous. My phone vibrated in my pocket, a text message. It was from May. "Just check the study. It is all set up. Pens, fancy ribbon-tied folders like a treaty signing, and a very expensive bottle of scotch. Rowan says it looks like an execution. Good luck with the cheesy slideshow." I texted back, "Thanks. Stand by." May's report confirmed it. The holiday logistics were staged and ready for the signing. Veronica was not waiting for tomorrow. She was using the after-dessert lull, just before the midnight toast, to corner my father. My gaze swept the room again, logging the players. I saw the police chief, Stratton, across the hall. He was near the bar, talking to no one, just watching. He watched Veronica, as if sensing his gaze. She looked over, she smiled, a small, tight smile of acknowledgement, and he sent her a wink, a slow, deliberate, conspiratorial wink. I clocked it, I filed it. It was not just familiarity, it was complicity. He was not just a guest, he was security. He was her ally, here to manage any fallout. My text to Officer Pike, my call to the AG, was the right move. I was going against an established network. A new voice broke my concentration. A woman in a glittering blue dress, one of the donors, was shaking Veronica's hand. "Veronica, I must tell you," the woman gushed. "The new grant your foundation gave to the hospital's research wing is a godsend. Truly, we were so impressed with the proposal." Veronica placed her other hand over the donor's, a gesture of profound humility. "We are just so thrilled to support Northbridge's vital work," she said, her voice warm. "We must always give back, mustn't we?" I knew that grant. I had written that grant. It was my research, my data, my application, the one my colleague had told me about, the one recredited to the Hale Foundation. Veronica had not just diverted the credit. She had claimed my work as her own proposal, using my intellectual property to secure her own philanthropic standing. She was stealing my past and my father's future in the same night. My father, released from his developer friends, drifted over to us. He looked tired, the performative pride fading. He looked at me, his eyes clouded with something I could not, or would not, name. "Elena," he said, his voice quiet, "it is good to have you here. This is right. You should think about moving back. Red Willow is your home." It was the closest he would ever come to an olive branch, a request for me to return to the fold, to stop fighting, to be his daughter again. Before I could form a single word, Veronica answered for me. "Oh, Malcolm, don't pressure her," she laughed, patting his chest. "She's a city girl now. She has her whole terribly busy life. We are just lucky she could fit us in." She was answering for him. She was answering for me. She was defining my reality, dismissing my presence, and diminishing his request, all in one perfectly phrased, smiling sentence. I looked past her. I looked directly at my father. The room, the noise, the choir shuffling behind me. It all fell away. There was only him. "No," I said. My voice was cool, clear, and specific. It cut through the warm, thick air. It was not an emotional outburst. It was a statement of fact, a clinical diagnosis. It was the first time all night I had directly contradicted her narrative. Veronica's smile did not just falter, it chipped. A small, hairline crack appeared in the perfect, polished enamel of her mask. Her eyes went cold, the festive lights in them dying instantly. She had heard the refusal. She had heard the steel beneath it. She had lost control of the conversation. She knew, I knew. The polite fiction of tomorrow was gone. The timeline was no longer hers to control. It was squeezing tight, and the moment was coming. The moment was now. The no hung in the air between us, a stark, cold object. Veronica's chipped smile did not repair itself. It dissolved. replaced by a mask of icy composure. The timeline had just shattered, and she was moving to seize the pieces. "We need to talk," she said, her voice no longer a public performance. It was a flat, cold command. She did not wait for a reply, simply turned and moved toward the pantry, the same room where she had struck me an hour before. She expected me to follow. I did. This was the confrontation she had planned, merely moved up in the schedule. The pantry was a long, narrow room, lined with floor-to-ceiling shelves. It was colder than the kitchen, smelling of dried herbs, bulk flour, and the faint, sweet scent of mouse poison from a trap I knew was hidden behind the coolers. The swinging door did not close fully. It remained ajar, a 6-inch gap that allowed the sounds of the party, a swell of laughter, the bright notes of the choir warming up, to filter in, a surreal soundtrack to the scene. Veronica did not turn on the overhead fluorescent light. We stood in the dim glow spilling in from the kitchen. She moved to a small built-in desk, the one where she stored her china catalogs and warranties. On it sat the full packet of documents I had glimpsed earlier, the one my cousin May had described. They were bound not in a simple staple, but in a sheath of crimson velvet ribbon, as if they were a Christmas gift. "You are being theatrical, Elena," she said, her voice quiet and sharp. "And you are upsetting your father." She pushed the packet across the desk. "This is not a debate. This is, as I said, a logistic. We are tidying his affairs. You will sign as a witness to his signature." "I am not just a witness," I said, my voice equally quiet. I did not touch the packet. "The summary you showed me lists me as the secondary power of attorney, and it mentioned a new trust." "You read very quickly," she said. There was no compliment in it. "I read for a living. I am not signing anything, and neither is he." "You will not stop this." She untied the crimson ribbon with a sharp, angry pull. The velvet slithered onto the desk. She fanned the pages out, revealing the signature lines at the end, each marked with a small yellow "Sign Here" tab. "This is for his own good. He is forgetful. He needs protection." "This is not protection," I said. I picked up the top page. It was the trust agreement. I did not need to hunt for the clause. I knew where it would be. I found it in under 30 seconds. Page 4, Section 3. "In the event the grantor, Malcolm Brooks, is deemed to be of questionable competency by the sole trustee." I scanned further. "The sole trustee is hereby granted full authority to liquidate, transfer, or otherwise dispose of any and all assets listed in Appendix A without further consent." It was a loaded gun. Questionable competency was not a legal term. It was a subjective opinion, her opinion. It was a license to strip him bare at her sole discretion. "Who drafted this language?" I asked. I kept my voice clinical, as if reviewing a patient chart. "A family friend," she said, her tone dismissive as she began arranging the pens. "David Sloan. He handles all our estate matters." "Sloan, not the banker. Michael Sloan. David." I ran the name. I knew it. He was the police chief's brother-in-law. The network was not just collaborative. It was familial. The law, the bank, and the enforcement, all woven together. "I am not signing this," I repeated. I placed the page back on the stack, my hand steady. "And I will not let my father sign it. This is not estate planning. This is theft." The air in the small room solidified. Veronica stopped moving. She turned, her face fully in the dim light, and the mask of the philanthropist, the loving wife, the concerned stepmother, was gone, all of it. What was left was cold, hard, reptilian rage. Her eyes were flat. Her voice dropped to a hiss, so low I barely heard it over the sound of the choir singing "O Holy Night" in the hall. "You will not," she whispered, "ruin this Christmas. You will not ruin this family. You have always been a little poison pill. Elena, you have always been the one thing in this house that was not perfect. Now, you will be a good daughter, and you will do as you are told." "No." She moved faster than I anticipated. She was not aiming for my face this time. She grabbed my right wrist, her fingers clamping down like a vice. Her grip was iron, fueled by a desperation I had underestimated. "You will," she hissed, trying to drag my hand toward the papers. It was a mistake on her part. I am not a fighter, but my work requires precision and steady hands. I did not panic. I did not strike back. I used her own momentum against her, pulling my arm back in a sharp, clean motion, rotating my wrist to break the angle of her grip. It was my pulling free, not her grabbing. That did it. The sudden jolt, the abrupt stop of her motion against my resistance, was too much for the already injured skin on her knuckles. She cried out, a sharp intake of breath, and stumbled back. She had been holding the crimson ribbon in her other hand. Now, as she steadied herself on the desk, a bright, dark smear of fresh blood stained the velvet. Her hand, her knuckles, the wrapping injuries, had split open. The cut was deep, angry, and undeniable. We both looked at it, the smear on the ribbon. It was no longer a document, it was evidence. The swinging door from the kitchen pushed open. Two of the donors, Mr. Henderson, the banker, and his wife, peered in, their faces flushed and smiling. "Oh, goodness," Mrs. Henderson laughed. "We were just looking for the bar backup. Are we interrupting?" The change in Veronica was instantaneous. It was the most terrifying and brilliant thing I have ever seen. The rage vanished. The pain in her eyes was gone. She instantly modulated, her entire posture shifting from predator to victim. She cradled her bleeding hand to her chest, her face crumpling into a mask of wounded, worried concern. "Oh, Elena," she whispered, her voice trembling, loud enough for the Hendersons to hear clearly. "I know you are upset. I know you are working too hard, but you do not have to lash out. We can talk about this. We are family. Please, just calm down." She had reframed the entire encounter in 3 seconds. I was the unstable, violent daughter. She was the injured, loving stepmother, trying to de-escalate me. "Mr. Henderson's smile froze. He looked from Veronica's bleeding hand to my face, his expression hardening. "Is everything all right here?" "Everything is fine," I said, my voice calm and low. I did not look at them. I kept my eyes on Veronica. "My stepmother just had an accident. She is not herself," Veronica whispered to them, shaking her head, tears welling in her eyes. "It's the stress. Please, go on. We will be right out." The Hendersons exchanged a look I knew would be all over town by morning, and retreated, pulling the door shut behind them. I pulled out my phone. Veronica watched me, her eyes narrowed, still cradling her hand. She thought I was calling someone. I did not. I opened the camera, angled the phone down, and took 2 quick, clear, high-resolution photographs of the blood-smeared crimson ribbon sitting on top of the trust document. The flash was off. The click was silent. I opened my encrypted note app, attached the photos, and added the timestamp. 10:58 p.m., pantry, adult conflict, physical assault initiated by V.H., evidence secured. The room was silent again, save for the thrum of the party outside. Veronica slowly straightened up. The tears were gone. The performance was over. She wrapped her bleeding hand in a clean linen napkin from a stack on the shelf. "You have until midnight," she hissed. Her voice was guttural. "Midnight, that is the deadline. You will bring your father to the study, and you will both sign, or I will have you removed from this house. Stratton will do it." I noted the deadline. Midnight, of course, Christmas. She did not just want the money. She wanted the symbolic victory. She wanted to sign the papers that secured her future on the precise boundary between Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. She wanted to own the holiday, to own the legacy, to own him. I said nothing. I just held her gaze, as if summoned by the tension. The door swung open again. This time, it was my father. He stood in the doorway, framed by the bright, warm light of the kitchen, a plate with a half-eaten slice of pie in his hand. He saw it all in one glance. He saw the white-hot rage on Veronica's face. He saw the cold, unyielding set of my jaw. He saw the official-looking papers fanned out on the desk. He saw the bloody napkin in Veronica's hand. This was the moment, the pivot point. This was when my father, Malcolm Brooks, the stoic contractor, the man of gestures, would finally be forced to speak, to act, to choose. He looked at Veronica. He looked at me. His gaze flickered to the documents. I saw the understanding dawn in his eyes. He knew, on some level, what they were. He knew this was the confrontation he had spent a decade avoiding. His face, which had been confused, crumpled. It was not anger. It was not resolve. It was exhaustion, a profound, bone-deep weariness. He said nothing, not one word. He did not ask what was wrong. He did not ask about the blood. He sighed, a small, rattling breath. He looked down at his pie, as if it were the most important thing in the world. And then, slowly, he backed out of the doorway, pulling the door gently closed, leaving us alone in the dim light. Conflict avoidance. It was not a weakness. It was his primary, active survival strategy. He had seen the fire, and he had chosen to walk away and let it burn. He would not help me. He would not save himself. Veronica smiled, a small, triumphant curl of her lips. She thought she had won. She thought my father's retreat was a signal of his support for her. It was a signal, but not the one she thought. It was the signal that finally, definitively, cut my last string of hesitation. My call to the AG, my text to Pike, the camera in the Mistletoe. They were no longer contingencies. They were the only available path. I could not win in private. The private routes were compromised. My father had just abdicated. Her allies, the chief and the banker, were in the next room, ready to back her version of events. I looked at her, at the blood on the napkin, at the papers that would steal my father's life. "I will see you in the study," I said. I walked out of the pantry, leaving her there. The escalation would not be private. It would be public. It would be absolute. The controlled burn was over. It was time to light the main fire. The trap was set. My father's retreat from the pantry was not a surrender. It was a clarification. He had chosen the path of least resistance, leaving me to face the fire alone. Very well, I would use the fire. I walked out of the pantry, my steps measured. I did not go to the study. I went upstairs, to the guest room, my movements calm, clinical. I retrieved my laptop. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened it, the decoy folder. Holiday recipes sat on the desktop. It was too simple. I renamed it. Slideshow, draft. Then I created a new folder beside it and labeled it Slideshow, Final. I dragged the 5 encrypted evidence folders: Foundation, Trust, LLC, Bank, Audio, into the Final folder. I put a simple password lock on it. Then I created a third, unlocked folder, right on the desktop. I labeled it Family Photos, Low Res. I put 3 harmless pictures in it. It was a more complex bait. It suggested a work in progress, a scattered mind, a daughter struggling with technology and sentiment. It was the perfect lure for a woman who believed she was superior in every way. I carried the open laptop downstairs. The party was reaching its crescendo. The choir was taking a break, the guests refilling their glasses before the midnight carols. Veronica was by the fireplace, the center of a sympathetic circle. She held the linen napkin to her hand, her face a mask of pained forbearance. Mrs. Albright was rubbing her arm. Judge Miller looked grave. She was performing the role of the victim, and the jury was lapping it up. Her eyes, cold and sharp, tracked me as I crossed the hall. I ignored her. I walked directly into the study, leaving the door open a few inches, just as it had been in the pantry. The room was empty, quiet, smelling of old leather and the faint, celebratory scent of the unopened scotch. I placed my laptop on the projector cart. I connected the HDMI cable. I jiggled the power cord. I left the laptop on, the desktop visible, the 3 folders sitting there like a challenge. Draft. Final. Family photos. I had laid the trap. I walked out, not back to the party, but to the deep alcove by the front door, a pocket of shadow where the coats were kept. I pulled out my phone. I opened the secure app that was streaming the feed from the camera hidden in the mistletoe. I waited. It took less than 1 minute. Veronica's emerald green dress filled the frame. She moved with a speed that belied her serene posture. She slipped into the study, her head turning, scanning the hall. She did not see the lens. She did not know about the secondary camera, a small nanny cam I had activated on the hallway bookshelf, which now captured her in perfect, damning profile. Her uninjured hand shot out, grabbing the trackpad. I watched on my screen as the cursor hovered. She clicked slideshow, final. The password prompt appeared. Her shoulders tightened. She clicked slideshow, draft. It opened. It was empty. She clicked family photos. The 3 low-resolution images popped up. I watched her face on the nanny cam feed. It was a storm of rage, frustration, and a new, sharp spike of fear. She knew I had something. She knew I was planning a reveal, but the empty and locked folders suggested I was bluffing, or worse, incompetent. She was a gambler who could not read her opponent's hand. She pulled out her own phone. Her fingers flew across the screen. She was texting. The mistletoe cam was at the perfect angle. I could not read the exact words, but I saw the recipient at the top of the thread. Stratton. She was not just snooping, she was coordinating. She was reporting my failed attempt at a slideshow to the police chief. She was preparing her countermove, likely telling him I was unstable and planning to disrupt the party. She snapped the laptop shut, the sound inaudible from my position, but the gesture was one of pure, final dismissal. She slipped back out of the study, her composure flawless, melting back into the crowd. She was rattled. She thought she had confirmation that I was bluffing, and she had her armed security on alert. I pulled out my phone. Time, 11:48 p.m. I sent a text to Officer Jonah Pike. Plan B. She has taken the bait and contacted the chief. The situation is escalating. Maintain position. Wait for my signal or for Stratton's arrival. Whichever comes first. The reply was immediate. Nearby, standing by. I saw Rowan and May approaching, weaving through the guests. Okay, cuz, Rowan said, sipping a stolen champagne. It's almost midnight. Time for the slideshow of ultimate cheese. Let's get this card in position before the choir starts. Perfect, I said, right under the archway, pointed at the big empty wall over the fireplace. They began to wheel the heavy cart out. As they did, I bent down, pretending to check the plug. My phone was in my hand. I opened the Smart Outlet app. The projector's plug was listed. Status, connected. I had the kill switch. I double-checked the HDMI cable. It was secure. I stepped away, moving to the edge of the room, finding a spot near Marisol, the ER nurse. She gave me a tiny, imperceptible nod. She was watching. The time was 11:52 p.m. I opened my email application. The draft to Assistant AG Dana Keene was waiting. The subject line, Official Whistleblower Complaint, Brooks Estate. I did not attach the audio or the photos of the bloody ribbon. Not yet. I attached only Phase 1, the public records, the PDF of the Vanguard Ridge LLC registration, the county assessor's map of the Harbor Street property, clearly showing my father as the original owner, the link to the Hale Foundation's press release, the one that recredited my Northbridge grant. I typed a short, cold message. Dana, this is Phase 1, purely public record, no accusations, only data. This is the foundation for the case. Am engaging the target now, awaiting confirmation of receipt. I hit send. The packet was gone. It was in the state system. At that exact moment, as if she had sensed the digital transfer, Veronica tapped a silver spoon against her champagne flute. The room quieted. A wave of expectant silence rolling over the guests. The choir members stood at attention. Friends! Her voice was a warm, golden bell, filling the hall. My wonderful, dear friends and family, thank you for being here, for making this Christmas Eve so special. It means the world to Malcolm and me. She smiled, a brilliant, dazzling expression of pure victory. She thought she was controlling the narrative. She had seen my empty folder. She knew Stratton was on his way. She was going to use my own surprise against me. She turned to my father, linking her arm through his, a picture of adoration. As we approach the magical hour of midnight, she continued, we have a very special announcement, a wonderful family decision that will secure the Brooks legacy, this town's legacy, for generations to come. My father, relieved that the pantry conflict was over and he was back on solid, scripted ground, took the cue. He was beaming. Thank you, Veronica, he said, his voice thick with genuine, misplaced emotion. This family, this house, it is my life, and tonight we have taken steps to ensure that legacy is protected, that it will continue, strong and secure, long after I'm gone. Veronica gazed up at him, her eyes shining. The room melted. Guests murmured their approval. This was the performance they had come to see. Love, legacy, and security. A new trust? Mr. Henderson, the banker, called out genially. Smart move in this tax environment. Malcolm, very savvy. Exactly, Veronica answered, turning her radiance on the banker. She was taking charge. Just a simple revocable trust. It just tidies everything up, puts everything in one safe, secure place. Dangerous instruments. Those, a new voice said. It was not loud, but it cut through the murmurs. A man in wire-rimmed glasses, holding a club soda, was standing near Marisol. He was the accountant donor. I have seen a lot of estates bleed out from poorly defined trustee discretion clauses. He was not asking a question. He was making a statement. Veronica's smile faltered for a half-second. A trap door had opened. She turned her smile on him, but it was thinner, brighter. Oh, I assure you, our discretion clause is purely administrative, she said, her voice dripping with confidence. It is just the power to manage the assets efficiently, to protect Malcolm from any undue influence or stress. She had done it. She had over-answered. She had revealed the intent to protect him, which implied he needed protecting. The accountant frowned, a deep, thoughtful crease between his brows. He looked at Henderson, the banker, and raised an eyebrow. The banker's smile became fixed. But the room did not care. They were on her side. My father's emotional speech, Veronica's beauty, the warmth of the cider and the promise of Christmas. It was an overwhelming tide. The accountant's frown was a ripple, quickly swallowed. Veronica was winning. She was holding the stage. This was the moment. My semi-public plan was dead. My father had already publicly endorsed her. If I let this go to the midnight toast, she would use the wave of goodwill to sweep him into the study, and Chief Stratton would be at the door to arrest me for trespassing or assaulting her. I had to flip the switch from semi-public to full, inescapable exposure. The time was 11:55 p.m. I pulled out my phone. I opened my text thread with Dana Keene. I typed one word, Mistletoe. I hit send. I looked at my laptop, sitting dark on the projector cart. The final folder was a decoy. The real files were in the cloud. I opened a secure app on my phone and entered a 9-digit code. The app began to remotely sync my cloud server to the laptop's hard drive, populating the real slideshow final folder, the one she thought was locked, with the evidence. My phone vibrated. A new email. From Dana Keene, Office of the Attorney General. Subject: Official whistleblower complaint. Brooks Estate. Body: packet received. On-call investigator notified and monitoring. Activating protocol. Good luck. I put the phone in my pocket. I looked up. Veronica was still smiling. Her hand raised, ready to begin the toast. She had no idea. The floor was gone. And now, Veronica's voice boomed, full of false sentiment. My darling daughter, Elena, has prepared a little surprise, a walk down memory lane. Elena, dear, are you ready? This was her move, She was co-opting my slideshow, framing it as a harmless, sentimental tribute. She believed she was handing me an empty stage, expecting me to stammer and fail, proving my instability. "I am ready," I said. My cousin Rowan, on cue, hit the main dimmer switch. The grand chandeliers faded, plunging the hall into a warm, expectant darkness. The only lights were the Christmas tree, the candles on the mantel, and the bright, sharp beam of the projector. It cast a massive, blank white square on the plaster wall above the fireplace. I tapped the spacebar on my laptop. The show began. The first slide was not a picture of me in braces. It was a screenshot, crisp and clear, from the Vermont Secretary of State's business registry. On the left, the registration for the Hale Family Foundation. On the right, the registration for Vanguard Ridge LLC. Lines, drawn in sharp red, connected the identical registered agent addresses and the filing attorney, David Sloan. Beneath it, a second image, the Red Willow County property record for the Harbor Street Workshop. Owner, Malcolm Brooks, transferee, pending finalization, Vanguard Ridge LLC. A confused murmur rippled through the room. This was not a Christmas photo. "What is this, Elena?" my father asked, his voice tight with confusion. Before I could answer, I clicked to the next slide. Slide 2. The text was large, impossible to miss. It was a direct quote from the trust document. "In the event the grantor, Malcolm Brooks, is deemed to be of questionable competency by the sole trustee, Veronica Hale." A gasp. Someone near the front. It was Mrs. Albright. "This is private, Elena," Veronica snapped, her voice losing its warmth. I did not respond. I pointed the laser pointer built into the clicker. A small red dot appeared on the screen, highlighting the footer of the document. This draft was prepared by the law offices of David Sloan. I clicked again, and an image of an email header populated next to it. Metadata shows the draft was emailed to Veronica on December 12th, from Mr. Sloan, whose brother-in-law, I paused, is Police Chief Stratton. The chief, standing near the bar, took an involuntary step forward. Slide 3, a simple timeline, a bank transfer schedule, pulled from a PDF I had found in a cached email file. December 27th, finalized transfer of Harbor Street title from M. Brooks to Vanguard Ridge LLC. Below it, December 27th, bridge loan payment due, secured by Vanguard Ridge LLC assets. "That's my project," my father whispered, his voice cracking. "That's my workshop." "She's leveraged, Dad," I said, my voice cutting through the silence. "She used your property to get a loan, and now she needs your entire estate, under her sole control, to cover it." Slide 4. A split screen. On the left, my original grant application to Northbridge Medical, detailing my research for the new catheter guide. On the right, an email chain between Veronica and the hospital's grant administrator. I highlighted one line from Veronica. "I must insist that the Hale Foundation be listed as the primary collaborator. We can omit Dr. Brooks's name from the press release to avoid any appearance of internal conflict of interest." The donor in the blue dress, the one who had praised Veronica, put a hand to her mouth. "That is enough!" Veronica shouted. The spell was broken. She lunged from the fireplace, her face a mask of pure rage, abandoning her performance of the wounded victim. She was not heading for me. She was heading for the projector cart, her hand outstretched, aiming for the power cord. "You are sick. You are unstable. This is slander." She grabbed the plug at the wall. She ripped it out. Nothing happened. The projector beam did not flicker. The laptop screen did not dim. They were both running on their own internal batteries. I looked at her, my hand in my pocket, grasping my phone. "I knew you would do that, Veronica." From my pocket, I pressed the kill switch on the smart outlet app. The massive Christmas tree went dark. The mantel candles, which were electric, died. Every lamp in the hall, every strand of festive light, every socket in the room went dead. The string quartet's amplifiers hissed and fell silent. We were plunged into near-total darkness, lit only by the cold, white beam of the projector, which was now the only source of power and truth in the entire house. Veronica stood frozen, the useless plug in her hand, caught in the beam like a stag in headlights. And into that shocked absolute silence, I played the audio file. It was my voice, from the pantry, just an hour before. Family shouldn't need lawyers. Then her voice, a low, venomous hiss, captured in perfect clarity by my phone. You will not ruin this Christmas. You will not ruin this family. You have until midnight. That is the deadline. You will bring your father to the study, and you will both sign, or I will have you removed from this house. Stratton will do it. The silence that followed the recording was heavier, colder, and more absolute than the darkness. The guests were statues. A surge of whispers erupted. Stratton will do it? Did you hear that? My God, the competency clause. The accountant donor, his face pale in the projector's glow, had his phone to his ear. He was not dialing. He was speaking, his voice low and urgent. Yes, I am at the party. You need to see this. It is exactly what we discussed. She put it in writing. He was talking to an outside counsel. I turned the sound off. I did not move from my spot. I spoke into the darkness, my voice soft, even, and amplified by the quiet. I am not making accusations, I said. I am only asking questions. This is data. This is a record. I am asking my father. And I turned, though I could not see him. Dad, did you understand that the document you were signing tonight gave your wife the sole power to declare you incompetent? Did you understand that she was transferring your workshop into a shell company she controls, to pay a loan she took out without your full knowledge? A choked, strangled sound came from the fireplace. She said, logistics. It was my father. He was stammering, his voice shattered. Malcolm, darling, he is lying, Veronica shrieked. Finding her voice, she pointed at me, her hand shaking. She is unwell. I told you. She had a fall. She is unstable. She is paranoid. She is attacking this family. This was her last defense, the credibility attack. I am not unstable, I said. I pulled the notarized packet from my blazer pocket. I am a clinical specialist. I collect data. I turned to my cousin. Rowan, the house lights, please. The breaker box is in the kitchen. A moment later, the chandeliers flickered and blazed back to life, revealing the tableau, the guests, their faces a mixture of shock, horror, and fascinated disgust. My father, slumped against the mantel, his face ashen gray. Veronica, her hand still holding the dead plug, her chest heaving. And me, standing by the projector, holding a stack of papers. This is a notarized log, I said, my voice carrying in the now bright room. It details every conversation, every email, every threat, and every discrepancy for the last 6 weeks. Dates, times, witnesses. I looked across the room at Marisol, the ER nurse. Marisol, you are a guest here tonight. You are also a mandated reporter. Did you observe my stepmother's right hand earlier this evening? Marisol's voice was clear, clinical. I did. At approximately 10:30 p.m., I overheard Mrs. Brooks tell Mrs. Albright that her knuckles were red due to wrapping injuries, which she described as thousands of tiny cuts. And what did you observe, professionally? I observed significant edema and deep tissue abrasion across the 3rd and 4th metacarpophalangeal joints, Marisol said, as if reading a chart. It was blunt force trauma, inconsistent with paper cuts, consistent with striking a solid object. I did not pause. I held up the small plastic evidence bag, the one containing the bloody crimson ribbon from the pantry. And this is the blood sample, time-stamped at 10:58 p.m., taken after she assaulted me in the pantry, reopening that wound, the assault she then reframed for Mr. Ma and Mrs. Henderson as me being unstable and lashing out. The room was a courtroom. The jury was staring, silent. Veronica had no allies left. She had only accomplices. and they were all, very suddenly, calculating their own exit. The projector beam was a spotlight, and the rest of the room was a dark, silent theater. The bright, chaotic return of the house lights felt like a violation, exposing the raw nerves of every guest. They were no longer participants. They were witnesses, trapped in a crime scene. My father was a gray statue by the fireplace. Veronica was a pillar of vibrating rage by the wall. The useless plug still clenched in her white-knuckled fist. The room was holding its breath. I moved. My feet felt very light. I walked from the projector cart, away from the evidence, and stepped directly into the center of the main archway. I stood on the small Persian rug, directly beneath the clump of mistletoe. This was her spot, the place she had stood all night, receiving toasts, dispensing charm, the place she had kissed my father, sealing her performance. I was claiming the stage. I turned to face my father. Veronica saw the symbolic shift. She saw me take her ground. She dropped the plug and moved, stalking across the floor to stand beside me, close enough that I could smell the metallic tang of her fear, a sharp, coppery scent beneath her perfume. She was trying to reclaim the stage, to stand with me, to reframe this as a family spat, a shared moment of drama. My father, Malcolm Brooks, moved then. It was the last, desperate reflex of a man who had spent his life avoiding this very moment. He pushed himself off the mantel and walked stiffly, his steps wooden, toward the archway. He did not look at me. He looked between us. He moved until he was standing directly in front of Veronica, his back to me. He was trying to end the show. He was trying to force the performative normalcy that had been his shield for a decade. He put his hands on her shoulders, and he kissed her. It was not the tender, staged kiss from earlier. It was a desperate, clumsy, silencing act, a forced kiss, meant to smother the fire, to declare his allegiance, to tell the room that the show was over and the family unit was intact. The kiss froze the room. It was grotesque. It was an answer. It was a choice. The accountant donor turned his head away in disgust. Mrs. Albright, who had moments before been consoling Veronica, now looked horrified. My father was kissing the woman who had just been proven, on a 10-foot screen, to be robbing him blind. He broke the kiss and kept his hands on her shoulders, his forehead resting against hers, a tableau of false intimacy. He still had not looked at me. I did not raise my voice. I spoke to his back, my voice calm, clinical. Dad, I have a simple question. Who benefits if you are declared incompetent? Per the draft clause she had written? My father's shoulders hitched. He did not turn. He was a man in a trap, and he was trying to pretend the walls were not there. He faltered, his mouth opening, but no sound came out. It is a protective measure, Veronica snapped, her voice high and shrill, her head whipping around to glare at me, her face still inches from my father's. It is to protect him from predators, from people who would try to influence him, like you. I did not look at her. I held my gaze on my father's spine. I raised my hand, a simple, non-threatening gesture. I asked my father. The silence stretched. The entire room was waiting for him to speak. He was the grantor. He was the subject. He was the man whose legacy was on the screen. He shuddered. He slowly, agonizingly, turned. He would not meet my eyes. He looked at the floor, at the wall, at the horrified faces of his friends. He could not answer, because he finally knew the truth, and he was too ashamed to admit it. I walked past them. I moved to the study, to the beautifully staged signing table. The ribboned documents were still there, next to the bottle of celebratory scotch. I took the small evidence bag from my pocket, the one containing the velvet ribbon, the one stained with her blood. I placed it directly on top of the signature page. A quiet, collective gasp rose from the guests. The bloody smear was a visceral desecration of the legal papers. It was the physical proof of the violence underpinning the transaction. At that precise moment, a sharp, authoritative knock echoed from the front door. The sound made everyone jump. Veronica's head shot up. a look of wild, desperate relief on her face. Stratton. She thought her cavalry had arrived. My cousin Rowan, who was standing nearest the door, opened it. But it was not Chief Stratton. It was Officer Jonah Pike. He was young, his uniform was crisp, and his expression was professionally neutral. He was not here as a guest. He was on duty. "Evening, folks," he said, his voice calm, polite, but firm. His eyes swept the room, cataloging the scene, the projector, the shocked faces, the two distinct groups of tension. "We received a noise complaint?" "There is no noise, officer," Veronica said, striding forward, taking charge, her relief shifting to confusion. This was not the man she had summoned. "It is a private party. You can go." "I am afraid I cannot, ma'am," Pike said, his gaze settling on her, then on me. "A noise complaint was logged, so I just need to verify that everything is okay." He stepped fully into the foyer. "I am required to ask, is everyone here safe?" His hand was not on his weapon. It was near his shoulder, adjusting his radio, his thumb brushing the small, blinking red light on his body camera. It was on. It was recording. It was capturing the room, the guests, the projector screen, and the bloody ribbon on the table, all time-stamped. "No one is safe, officer," Veronica said, her voice rising, pointing at me. "This woman, my stepdaughter, has assaulted me. She is hysterical. She has disrupted our private gathering. I want her removed." "I have not assaulted anyone," I said, my voice cutting through hers, directed at Pike. "I am, however, stopping a felony. Officer, my name is Elena Brooks. That is my father, Malcolm Brooks." I pointed to him. "And this is his wife, Veronica Hale. She is attempting to have him sign fraudulent trust documents under duress on Christmas Eve, which grant her the sole authority to declare him incompetent and liquidate his entire estate. The evidence is on that screen." Pike's eyes moved to the screen, read the competency clause, and then moved to the bloody ribbon on the table. His face remained neutral, but his posture changed. He was no longer a patrolman on a noise complaint. He was a witness. "I am not asking for an arrest, officer," I continued, pressing the advantage of my own reasonableness. "I am simply asking, as a concerned family member, that no documents be signed tonight. I am asking to postpone any and all signatures until my father, Malcolm Brooks, can have these papers reviewed by his own independent counsel, someone who is not," I glanced at the chief's name on the screen, "a family friend with a clear conflict of interest." It was a simple, logical, and perfectly reasonable request. It made Veronica's accusations of me being hysterical look absurd. "That is unacceptable," Veronica sneered, her mask of the victim shredding. "This is a family matter. You have no right—" The front door, which Rowan had not fully closed, was pushed open again. This time, it was Chief Stratton. He was not in uniform. He was in a rumpled suit, his face flushed, his eyes darting, furious. He had clearly been summoned from a rival party or a quiet drink, and he had come running. "What in the hell is going on here?" Stratton bellowed, striding into the room, his presence sucking the air out. He saw Pike, and his eyes narrowed. "Pike, what are you doing here? I did not call for patrol." "Noise complaint, Chief," Pike said, his voice flat, his hand still near his camera. "Veronica, are you all right?" Stratton asked, turning to her, his voice softening, a clear signal of his allegiance. "No, I am not," she cried, rushing to his side. "She," pointing at me, "attacked me. She is insane. She is slandering me. I want her arrested. I want her out of this house. This is a private matter." Stratton nodded, his face hardening. He turned to me, his expression one of pure, corrupt authority. He was her weapon, and he was ready to be fired. "All right, Ms. Brooks, you have heard her. This is a private residence. You are no longer welcome. You will collect your things and leave, now." He was going to throw me out. He was going to remove the witness, shut down the projector, and allow the signing to happen under his protection. This was the checkmate Veronica had planned. I did not move. I looked directly at Stratton, my voice as cold and hard as the ice on the roads outside. "Chief Stratton, you are compromised." "What did you say to me?" he snarled. "I said you are compromised. Your brother-in-law, David Sloan, drafted these fraudulent documents. Your presence here, in a non-official capacity, to remove me after I have presented evidence of a crime, constitutes witness tampering and conspiracy to commit fraud." "You are delusional," he scoffed, but his eyes darted to the donors, a flicker of uncertainty. "I am not," I said, "because as of 11:55 p.m., 10 minutes ago, the complete packet of evidence, including the public property transfers, the emails, the bank schedules, and your brother-in-law's metadata, was delivered to Assistant Attorney General Dana Keene's office. It was logged as an official whistleblower complaint." Stratton's face went white. "My keyword, mistletoe, was received," I continued, "which triggered a protocol. The state investigators were notified that I was engaging the target and that the local police chief was a party to the fraud. Officer Pike's body camera is recording. The camera in the mistletoe is recording. My phone is live streaming to a secure cloud server. Any action you take against me tonight, Chief, will not be viewed as peacekeeping. It will be viewed as retaliation. It will be Exhibit A in the state's case against you." The silence was absolute. Stratton stared at me. The color drained from his face. He looked at the projector. He looked at Pike's blinking red light. He looked at the faces of the donors, the bankers, the judge, all of them staring at him, their expressions now cold, calculating. He was no longer a chief. He was a co-conspirator, caught in the beam of a very bright light. He backed down. He did not say a word. He simply took a half-step back, his hands, which had been clenched, opening in a gesture of, not surrender, but sudden, profound caution. The donors saw it. The entire room saw the chief of police fold. The power had shifted, irreversibly. The accountant donor, the one with the wire-rimmed glasses, quietly stepped away from Veronica's side of the room, moving closer to the door. Mr. Henderson, the banker, did the same. Judge Miller suddenly found the pattern on the wallpaper fascinating. The human wall around Veronica Hale dissolved. She was left standing alone, next to a compromised cop, under the mistletoe that no longer offered a halo. And then, my father looked at me. He was still by the fireplace, but he was no longer slumped. He was standing upright. His breath was unsteady, shallow, visible puffs in the cold room, but his eyes were clear. For the first time in my adult life, he was not looking through me. He was not seeing a problem, a conflict, a difficult daughter. He was not seeing his past. He was seeing me, Elena. He was seeing the specialist. He was seeing the person who had just dismantled his prison, brick by bloody brick. He saw me. The silence in the room was absolute. A heavy, cold vacuum that sucked all the warmth from the chandeliers. Stratton was a statue of pale, impotent fury. Veronica was trembling. Her isolation a physical thing, a circle of empty floor around her. My father. His eyes locked on mine, seemed to be aging in real time, the mask of the stoic provider crumbling to reveal the terrified, exhausted man beneath. And then, from across the town green, the bells from the white-steepled church began to chime. They were deep, resonant, and slow. 1, 2, 3, each chime was a hammer blow against the tension. 4, 5, 6, the sound was not festive, it was a tolling. 7, 8, 9, it was the sound of a deadline. 10, 11, 12. Midnight, it was Christmas Day. I spoke into the new silence, my voice steady, final. No signatures tonight, independent counsel in the morning. That, finally, broke her. The legal, logical finality of it. "No!" she shrieked, a sound of pure animal panic that was no longer a word. She lunged, a desperate, clumsy movement, not at me, but at the study table. She was not going for the projector. She was going for the folder, for the bloody ribbon, for the trust documents. She was going to destroy the evidence. She never made it. Officer Jonah Pike moved with a fluid, professional speed that was almost beautiful. He did not touch her. He did not raise his voice. He simply stepped between her body and the table. His own body, a neutral, physical barrier. "Ma'am," he said, his voice calm and utterly devoid of emotion. "I cannot let you touch those. This is a potential evidence scene." He was perfectly professional, his presence ensuring the safety of the crowd, his action preventing the destruction of evidence. He managed the adult-on-adult confrontation without laying a hand on anyone. My phone vibrated in my blazer pocket, a sharp, single buzz. I pulled it out. The screen bright in the quiet room, an email notification. It was not from Dana Keene. It was an automated reply from the Attorney General's office. But it was not the standard out-of-office message. I read it aloud, my voice projecting into the silent hall. "This is an automated response from the Office of the Attorney General. Your packet, reference number 977B, has been received and logged by the on-call investigator, who has been notified of the active situation at your address." I looked up, my gaze sweeping past Veronica, past my father, to land directly on Chief Stratton. "The protocol is active." That was the final cut. The accountant, the man with the wire-rimmed glasses, cleared his throat. The sound was loud in the stillness. He did not look at Veronica. He addressed my father, but his voice was loud enough for every donor, every guest, to hear. "Malcolm," he said, his tone curt, precise, and cold. "Pending a full, independent review of the Hale Foundation's finances and its clear, commingled relationship with the entity Vanguard Ridge, my firm is immediately withdrawing its sponsorship, and as your accountant, I will be advising all of my clients who are present tonight to do the same." "As will I," Mr. Henderson, the banker, said quickly, his face pale. He was already moving toward the door. "Tom, wait for us," the donor in the blue dress whispered, grabbing her husband's arm. She looked at Veronica, her expression one of pure, unadulterated disgust. The financial wall, the social armor that Veronica had spent a decade building, crumbled to dust in less than 30 seconds. This, finally, was what reached my father. Not the lies, not the theft, not the assault. It was the public, catastrophic humiliation, the collapse of his legacy in front of the very people he had tried to impress. His face, which had been gray with shock, flushed a dark, mottled red. He took a single, unsteady step forward. He looked at the trust documents on the table, the bloody ribbon like a wound on his future. His voice was shaking, thick with a lifetime of swallowed words, but it was loud. It was the loudest I had ever heard him. "No one," he said, his voice cracking on the word. "No one signs anything. Not tonight, not ever, not without my lawyer." He reclaimed his personhood. He reclaimed his name. He said the word my lawyer, not the family friend, not our attorney, my lawyer. Veronica's mask did not just crack, it disintegrated. She was left with nothing but the raw, desperate panic beneath. "Malcolm," she tried, her voice a desperate, wheedling pivot. "Darling, listen to me. They do not understand. I was only protecting you. I was protecting the estate. From her. From this. It was all for you." "Then why?" I asked, my voice quiet. "Did you tell me in the pantry? Stratton will do it? The audio does not lie. Veronica." The pantry recording. It was the final, unanswerable fact. It undercut her entire performance of protection. She had nowhere left to go. Officer Pike looked at Veronica, his face impassive. Then he looked at Stratton. "Chief," he said, pointedly, respectfully, but with a new edge of authority, "given the complications, I am going to need to take voluntary statements from everyone involved. Tomorrow, at the barracks. We can schedule a time. Ma'am? He looked at Veronica. I will not be giving any statement, Veronica hissed. She snatched her emerald green wrap from the back of a chair. Her movements jerky, violent. She was a cornered animal. She turned and stormed toward the front door. She was running. But she stopped. She stopped dead, right in the center of the archway, right beneath the mistletoe. She had run, but she was cornered, not by the law, not by Pike. She was cornered by the suffocating, absolute silence of the 50 people who remained, all of them staring at her, their faces cold, their judgment passed. She was trapped in the spotlight of their silence. She looked back, one last desperate appeal, toward my father. Malcolm? He was still standing by the table. He looked at her. He looked at this woman who had been his wife, his partner, his armor, and his jailer. He looked at her, exposed and defeated, framed by the mistletoe. And he took a step. He stepped away from her. He stepped back, toward the fireplace, toward the evidence, toward me. The entire room inhaled as one. It was the quietest, loudest separation I had ever witnessed. Veronica saw it. It was done. She turned and fled, disappearing into the cold, snowy night. I watched her go. Then I turned back to the table, methodically. I collected the bloody ribbon, folding it back into the evidence bag. I shut my laptop, the screen going black. The show was over. I reached into my blazer pocket, the one that had held the camera, and took out a simple, white business card. I walked over to my father. He looked small and old. He was staring at the spot where she had been. He looked at me, his eyes wet. I did not hug him. I did not console him. I handed him the card. He is an elder law attorney, I said, my voice gentle but firm. From the next county over, he specializes in defense and asset recovery. Call him in the morning. My father took the card, his fingers trembling. He stared at it. From the foyer, we heard a final hiss. Veronica, one last time, paused at the open door, the snow swirling in behind her. Her face was a mask of pure reptilian hatred. You, she spat at me, you have ruined Christmas. I looked at her, framed in the doorway, the snow falling like ashes. I had no anger left, only the truth. No, I said, my voice clear, closing the knot forever. I ended a fraud that wore a halo. She was gone. Chief Stratton was the next to leave. He did not make eye contact with Pike, or with me, or with my father. He slipped out, a ghost abandoning his own haunting. The donors dispersed, melting away in a silent, hurried wave, not wanting to be associated with the scene, their coats clutched, their faces averted. Officer Pike was the last to leave. He walked over to my father, who was still holding the attorney's card, staring at it as if it were a lifeline. Pike placed his own business card on the table beside the scotch. Mr. Brooks, call me tomorrow. We will file the official report. He looked at me, and for the first time, his expression was not neutral. He gave a single, professional nod of respect. Then he, too, was gone. The house was silent, empty, save for the 3 of us who lived there. My father, me, and the wreckage. The choir, stranded outside on the green, perhaps not knowing the party had imploded, began their last song, a muffled, distant verse of Silent Night. The mistletoe, the one that held my camera, hung in the archway. It no longer looked festive. It looked like a courtroom seal, dark and heavy. I looked at the floor where Veronica had stood, cornered by the silence. Her fingers, the ones that were red and weaponized, had curled around nothing. She had grasped for everything, and she was left with nothing. My father stood between the open, snowy door and me. He was no longer looking at the exit. He was finally, after a lifetime, choosing to face the truth. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We would love to know where you are tuning in from, so please drop a comment below and share your thoughts. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories. Give this video a like and support us by hitting that hype button so more people can hear this story.